Today I'm going to be making one of our favorite homemade meals, and that is a southern style chicken and dumplings. It's just an incredibly simple dinner to throw together, and it's filling. My family loves it, and so I thought I would take you guys along with me as I get it ready this particular day. So, hi and welcome if you're new here. My name is Haley, and if you're not new here, welcome back. This is a channel where I just share a variety of different homemaking type content. I also throw in some homeschooling content, just everything that I have going on in my regular day to day life. So, on this particular day, I actually made this video a few weeks ago, and I'm just now getting around to editing it, but I am making, like I said, chicken and dumplings. And the first thing that I'm going to start by doing is getting my chicken cooked. Now, you could do this recipe with like a rotisserie chicken and just add in some store-bought chicken broth, but I have a freezer full of chicken. So I'm just going to go ahead and cook up a few chicken leg quarters in my Instant Pot. And you could do this on the stove, but the reason that I'm doing it in the Instant Pot is because we actually had to leave this day and go to my grandpa's. He has a ton of kale in his garden. So we left and went over there and picked a bunch of kale that he was just wanting to get rid of. So we went, we picked that, and I was letting my chicken cook in the Instant Pot while we were gone. And then whenever we got home, I was able to shred it. I love using my electric pressure cooker for that reason because I can put something in it. If I'm busy or I need to run out of the house, I can just leave it cooking while I'm gone, and then whenever I get back, I can just jump back into making whatever I was going to make, or if it's a complete recipe, everything is done for me. So now what I'm doing is I'm going to start making the dumplings. Now, the way that I've always liked chicken and dumplings is just the dumplings and the chicken in the broth. We don't add any vegetables or anything like that to it. I see recipes sometimes where people put peas or carrots in there, but the way we have always eaten them in our area is just chicken and broth with the dumplings. And I know some recipes use like say you can use like biscuits and roll them out flat. I like this type of dumpling. I don't know, it's just the kind that I've always grown up with. And I used to be intimidated by making them from scratch, but there's really nothing to it. So after you do it the first time, it's like, wow, that was easy. I would rather just make them from scratch how I like them. But all it is the flour, melted butter, an egg, some milk, salt, and then you just mix that all together until you get a nice ball of dough. And you can mix this by hand as well. I actually did not start using my stand mixer for it until probably a year ago whenever I got my first stand mixer. So you can definitely just mix it by hand and then just add more flour as you need. It really kind of depends on the type of flour you're using and how precise you are with your measurements, but I usually just mix it up and then add flour into it as I need. And then you get this nice formed ball of dough here. You're going to leave it and let it rest for about 30 minutes. And I will put a link to the actual recipe down in the comments so that you can print it out if you want to. I know I move kind of fast in the videos, but this is what that dough looked like whenever it all got done. And then you want to get out a pretty large pot in order to put your broth in and bring it back up to a boil. So I'm getting that broth out of the Instant Pot that I had cooked my chicken leg quarters in. I'm using that in a combination of water with some chicken broth powder that I order. So that's what you see me doing here, is adding in some additional water to the pot just because I didn't have enough from my Instant Pot. So I'm adding in my water, adding in my chicken broth. You could also use boxed chicken broth, or if you cook your whole chicken in a large pot like this, then just, measure out as much liquid as you want to put in there. I can't remember the exact measurements that I put in the written recipe, but just know that this recipe is very flexible. So, if you get to the end and your broth is too thick, you can add more liquid to it. If it's too thin, you can add more flour to it, because the flour is what is actually going to thicken up the base of these chicken and dumplings. So whenever you get ready to roll out your dumpling dough, you want to be very generous with the flour. So I'm just covering my entire work surface with a heavy layer of flour to keep my dough from sticking, but also, like I mentioned, that flour is what's going to help thicken up the base of these dumplings. So I want my dumplings coated pretty well, and then whenever you get to the end, you can also scoop that flour off your counter if you want to and add it into the dumplings, and that should get them to a nice like thick base that the dumplings are in. And then I'm just going to roll this out as flat as I can get it. The thickness of your dumplings is kind of a preference thing. Again, I like mine very thin. My sons actually call them noodles because I get them so thin. So I'm just going to keep rolling it and rolling it until I get it stretched out really far. And then I take my pizza cutter and I just cut strips going one direction, and then I go back the other way to get some little squares. And I'm going to show you real quick how thin I get this dough before I start to cut it. So you can see there it's pretty thin there. That's how we like it. And they do fluff up some as they cook, so they won't be quite that thin. They'll absorb some of the liquid and fluff up a little bit while they're cooking. My lines are not perfectly straight or even. I am not a perfectionist when it comes to cooking. I just kind of follow my own preferences. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes I make mistakes, but I feel like that's the best way to learn. Usually everything's still edible, but it may not have been as great as it could have been. But I've just learned that whenever it comes to cooking homemade food or food from scratch, you just have to jump in and kind of let go of the perfectionist mindset or wanting everything to look exactly like it does on the internet. You just have to do your best and be content with it. And that's kind of why I always make these simple types of meals. They're not extravagant, they're not always the prettiest, but they're nutritious usually, and it's what I can manage right now. So I've just had to accept the fact that I can't make all these beautiful recipes that I see sometimes on other channels with all these different steps. I just have to make what I know and what I have time for. Okay, what I'm doing now is the chicken broth is back up to a boil. So I'm taking my dumplings, I'm just picking them up off the countertop there and dropping them in one or a couple at a time. I try to pick them apart, but sometimes the dumplings kind of start to stick together. But you just drop them in that boiling broth, let them cook for a little while, and then add in your shredded cooked chicken back to it. And that's it. Put some salt, some pepper in there. You let it cook until those dumplings are tender. And that is it. That's how we make our chicken and dumplings, and we love them. They're filling. Doesn't take a whole lot of ingredients. It's probably stuff you already have on hand. If you keep a pantry stock, then keep just those basic baking ingredients. And this is what they look like whenever they're done. They're thick, they're creamy, they're yummy. And I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to check out the link below for the written recipe.